Conclusione in rete! Andrea Pirlo! Un gol pazzesco! Del Piero! Alex! Palla di Pogacar, Pogba! Rete! Un gol incredibile! Pogba fa esplodere lo Juventus Stadium!
We are here today to talk about controversy. We're here to talk about blasphemy. We're here to talk about something truly unacceptable when we should be talking about football. Because yesterday, despite everything, despite the tension, despite the rivalry, the stakes, what we were watching was becoming a truly entertaining edition of the Derby d'Italia. A match worthy of its history, a match worthy of what Serie A is supposed to represent, a match worthy of Juventus. But instead, once again, we are forced to talk about everything and anything except football. And for Juve fans like us, this is no longer surprising. There is no longer shock following what we witnessed yesterday. This is becoming more or less routine. We've seen it with a soft handball against João Mario against Verona. We've seen Orban intentionally elbow Gatti in that same match in the face, go unpunished. We've seen Cabal get slide tackled in the box and not even reviewed, following in close proximity a ridiculous penalty called for Napoli against Genoa with even less contact. We've seen clear fouls ignored. We've seen penalties overturned. We've seen penalties not reviewed. We've seen identical incidents judged completely differently depending on the shirt being worn or the game being played. Week after week, match after match, the lack of consistency has become the only consistent thing. And this is the deeper issue. Football is human. Players make mistakes. Coaches make mistakes. Referees make mistakes. That's part of the game. But VAR exists to hopefully mitigate and reduce these errors, not selectively enforce them, not to amplify them, and certainly not to institutionalize inconsistency. And the way that the game is being called right now, it just incentivizes simulation and diving, which damages the sport that we all love. Because when you look at the cumulative impact against our club, the matches against Verona, twice against Lazio, Fiorentina, Inter, among others, we've got 7, 8, potentially 9 points lost due to refereeing decision. That's not frustration. That's not bad luck. That's a material distortion of this season. Up to 9 points would see Juve sitting comfortably in second place right now. Instead, we're fighting not just our opponents, but we are fighting the system itself. And on top of that, we have to deal with the disgusting behavior and comments from Interisti themselves and their supporters, their fan base, truly earning the Intermerda name that we give them. And like all of you, I'm angry. I was angry yesterday. I'm still angry today. I've been able to put it into a calmer demeanor, but we are here about it clearly, honestly, and completely because this club, this team, and this fan base deserves it. And we are so happy to have you with us today. Ciao tifosi bianconeri, and welcome to episode 347 of the Turin Giants podcast. I am Kevin, your host for today's episode. Today's episode will follow a slightly different format than usual because, frankly, again, that was not a usual match. But before we get into that structure, I'm joined by the Turin Giants crew. We have Zach. Zach, how are you?
I am usually calm after games. Win, lose, draw. I can absorb it and move on with my life. This one was a tough one, is a tough one to let go. But I'm here doing our duty to provide content in response to Juventus games.
And we have Frederic. Frederic, Good evening.
Good evening, guys. Well, I'm used to fighting against the grain, going against the grain. I'm used to being beat down, knocked out, and still resurrecting alongside my team. I'm used to being laughed at, spat out, being shouted at. I'm even used to getting sent to another division because of mistakes that everybody in the former division has made. But I'm not used to being robbed 4 to 5 times in the same game and having people afterwards with a straight face saying that it wasn't robbery. I'm not used to that. I'll never get used to that. And I will not stand for that. And I think we all will be discussing these highlighted events, because I have no other name for it, because football didn't come into play yesterday. This was daylight robbery. This was the name of Juventus being besmirched by people who have no notion of what we stand for, and I won't stand for it.
And last but not least, we have Jack. Jack, how's it going?
How's it going, Kev? Guys, how are you? Everyone, thanks for joining us. I don't even know what to say. I've been at a loss for words for a full day now. I think at one point this morning, because I was with both of my kids playing, I feel like I'm going to take a different angle here. It's like having Legos, something you enjoy and love with your children. Anybody out there listening who has kids, you love to build with them. There's something you enjoy shopping for with them. It's like a love of our club. But Legos, when you have little kids, are those things that you step on without knowing they're there. And that's what all of these experiences feel like. I feel like all these refereeing decisions have been the Legos laying around on the floor, and you can't avoid them, and you keep stepping on them. And it's like someone is doing it intentionally. So I am breathing with the same anger as my compatriots here and all of you listening. And I'm sure we're going to dig into it. But long live the Legos, because we love Juve. But damn, ones that you step on hurt real bad.
The Lego analogy put a smile on my face, Jack. Something that hasn't happened in the last 24 hours. So thank you.
I like that. Thank you. We are live on YouTube on Sunday, February 15th, roughly 24 hours after the final whistle at the San Siro. The Napoli-Roma match will be kicking off during our recording. So if you are listening or listening to our podcast or viewing the video on YouTube, we won't know what that means for us in the table, despite us knowing exactly what yesterday meant for us. But before we begin, if you are watching and joining us here on YouTube live, thank you for being with us. We'll give a shout out to a number of the folks in just a bit. If you're watching the video afterwards, please hit a like and subscribe. We are pushing so hard towards 1,000 subscribers, and we get closer every day. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, a 5-star review makes a huge difference. Thank you for taking a few seconds to do that. Today, we're going to cover 4 main topics. First, we're going to start with reaction from Juve leadership, including Chiellini, Comoli, and some words that we've heard about how Elkan kind of handled and managed this yesterday as well. Second, we will talk about the broader reaction across Italy and world football and kind of the implications for our club and what it means for Serie A. Then third, we will talk about the match itself. We're not going to do a thorough analysis throughout all of the play, going half by half, going through some of the meaningful milestones of the game. But we will spend some time talking about our players and the mentality. And then last, we'll close kind of looking ahead, right? We've got some big matches ahead against Galatasaray and Como, and the emotional weight of what was experienced on Saturday will no doubt have an impact to the preparation for those matches. All right. So before we get into that, though, I just, Zach, Frederic, Jack, I'd love just for each of you just to kind of share. You woke up this morning and you saw what our team put on the field. You clearly read and understood all the commentary afterwards. We know what happened during the match. Just give each of you one kind of thought or feeling that you woke up with on this dark Sunday. Zach, we'll start with you.
I just don't want the fans, and I certainly hope that the players won't forget or get lost, or I don't want them to get lost in all of the noise that they showed a quality football and the fight and determination and resilience that we so often haven't seen from them, certainly under Mota and Tudor. And I think that was an enormous display of courage from this team that could have folded in the light of injustice to go out and play the way that they did. And that's what stuck with me.
Frederic.
Yesterday it was pure rage. Of course, when you get to sleep on it, those emotions tend to calm down a bit. That wasn't the case. My rage was transformed into disbelief. And when I read all the media and the highlights from abroad and in Italy as well, that disbelief just became a bit more bigger. And it, when some things happen in your life you have no control over, and sometimes you just need to accept them and go ahead with what you do. But I think we've gotten to a point as Juventus supporters that, the tough things we had to chew on and swallow yesterday were just a culmination of all those things, and it was just too much. And I felt disheartened. I felt angry. I felt betrayed. And frankly, I still feel that way. Even with the retrospect, even with, trying to look at it from another point of view, there's no excuse. There is no, patch that can help fix this or whatever, because this was just the epitome of injustice. And I'm kind of dangling between emotions at this point, just because of the consequences that it may have for us in the future. So, yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag for me, unfortunately.
Jack, aside from dreaming about Legos, what was your thought this morning? Give us something.
Mine started a little bit where Fred was going there, with disbelief at the injustice, at the number of times that this has happened and the profound impact it's had on this club. I woke up this morning, though, after sleeping on it, and while still carrying some of that disbelief, some of that had changed into embarrassment, more profoundly embarrassment for the sport that I love. I think we lost some of the soul of calcio yesterday, and I think soccer continues to lose its soul with these horrible calls impacting people's lives. And I'm talking about the players and the staff and everyone involved with the clubs, but then also, fans who spend money and cheer for these teams. And for me, at least growing up, what the sport represented was a connection to cultures, a connection to people, a love of the same sport. And we're losing that connection. I feel like I think the sport has lost its connection with reality, and it's impacting the way we view the sport as fans. And we've talked about this before, this sport becoming business, but for the love of sport and for the love of calcio, it was really embarrassing to see what happened yesterday. And I'm sure we'll talk in more detail about why that might be. But for now, that was my thought this morning. Was I just feel sorry for the sport of soccer today.
Well said, guys. So before we get into the first topic, I just want to thank those of you who are taking time out of your day, to spend some time with our crew. A lot of repeat just folks in attendance and audience here. We've got Skyline 1, we've got Skippy, Juve fan for life, DR1S, Miv, we've got Ozymandias, of course. Shout out to one of the best television episode names ever. Magic Realism, Mickle, of course, Mitchell White. Who else do we have here? Juve fan for life. I think I said you already, but shout out ×2. Bracula, and many, many others. Thank you for spending time with us. So look, our club's reaction, and I think ever since Agnelli left, and what happened with the previous board of directors, plus Valenza, accounting issues. We had the salary payment shenanigans during COVID. The new board came in, a bunch of professionals buttoned up to put the club back in good kind of standing legal and financial order, to make sure that there was stability within the club for us to build a football team around. And I think many of us over the last couple of years have been craving for the leadership and the management in La Società of Juve to speak up about things that had experienced, that we experienced with our club, that we have gone through in Serie A. And Comoli has generally been pretty silent since coming in last summer. Yesterday was the first time in a very long time we've seen any real response and reaction from our leaders. And I think everybody now has seen that viral video from halftime with Spalletti, with Chiellini, and with Comoli yelling at La Pena and others. Comoli dropping expletives, Chiellini saying this is non-existent. You have Spalletti with his choice words as well. And then that, I think, laid the foundation for post-match, Spalletti and the players electing not to speak. And you have Chiellini and Comoli speaking to DAZN, Sky, among others. So, Frederic, I'd like to start with you because you were watching it live. I'm not sure how many folks did watch it live, because not everybody gets that coverage depending on which country they're in. Although I'm sure most people have had an opportunity to read translated versions of it this morning. But just kind of take us through what Chiellini and Comoli were saying, and if there was a difference in kind of theme or tone between the two, try and land that as well.
Yeah, they first appeared on Sky Italia, and the tone was very harsh. The tone was very strict, very harsh, very unforgiving. I'm not going to quote them because in general, it basically is all the same, but they were very, very, very pissed off at Sky. Also because of the fact that a few of the guests at Sky Calcio wanted to, light up the fire a bit and were saying like, but this and that, and trying to see it from the ref's point of view, but they weren't having it. Comoli came out and said this is blatantly something that is unforgivable and has been witnessed by the entire world. Was very harsh on that. He also refused extra comment when they asked him to in the studio. He gave the word to Chiellini. At DAZN, it was a bit, I'm not going to say mellow, but it was more generalized in the sense that Chiellini explicitly said that he felt that the governing body of FIGC was just not doing a good job, that the rules and regulations are very mixed and not very clear and open for interpretation, and that they won't stand for that. And as Chiellini became to choose his words more wisely, Comoli dropped the hammer and said, this is unacceptable. We won't stand for that. Italian football lost. We won't give up. We'll fight for Juventus, all united, all together, because this is something that is truly unacceptable, which kind of set the tone, really, for everything we saw in the media today, and gave me personally a very reassuring feeling about the future. I'm not going to talk about transfers or whatever, because we all ever say about that. But in a sense that these were two people that chose to appear in front of the camera and be very harsh, even though that you can expect maybe that there'll be a fine or two or whatever, regardless over what they said or how they said it. But the way they came across and the way that their demeanor was felt by people in the studio and people at home was not only very sincere, but was very a clear sign of, we want to move forward. We will not stand for injustice like we suffered a great deal throughout the years. this will not stick. So for me, at that point, I felt a bit reassured. I was still angry, I was still pissed, but it felt reassuring to me and sincere, which is saying a lot because we have our doubts about management as we should. But
Mhm.
at that point, I felt it was very um, appropriate for them to stand up and speak up. But the way as they did, to me, was very, very. I'd almost choose the word settling because I felt strengthened by their words and their demeanor.
Do you think, maybe a shift to Jack, do you think that this is a moment in time reaction fueled by passion, or do you feel that this is kind of a turning point where we're going to see just a more intentional kind of stance and communication from our leadership?
I hope it's a turning point. I hope it's a tipping point. It's actually a great book by Malcolm Gladwell talking about tipping points,
Yes, it
right?
is.
A moment where things change, right? And you want to hope that this is a bit of a tipping point. I thought it was really, refreshing to see us come out swinging, right? So often we are the punching bag, right? And I think even just looking back a few years, I don't know that we even recognize yet because we're not far enough removed from it. But what a good job Allegri did at taking those punches, right? He used to get, pelted by the media. He took so many shots for the club, especially that year where we were docked all those points, right? Taking points away, giving points back, taking points away. He took so many hits, right? He carried us, I feel like, to those finishes, third and fourth, whatever it was. But we were always the ones taking the hits. I do hope this was a bit of a tipping point. I do think our argument that this is very obvious and blatant injustice holds a lot more merit than some of our arguments in the past. So I am hoping that this is a tipping point. And I do like that we came out swinging. I do like that we made statements about the injustice. I do like that we were talking about the repetitive nature of what we keep saying and how impactful it's going to be on this club. So to me, that was something refreshing and something I'll take positive away from the last 24 hours.
Yeah, awesome. And just a very brief side note here. You may see one of the folks here in our chat, Juve Gentleman 6762. Thank you for being with us. If the people listening or the people in the chat aren't following his Instagram account, Juventus Gentleman, please do. It's awesome. The animations and some of the digital art that he does for each and every game in Juve situations is really cool. Thanks for being a supporter of Turin Giants. My friend. Zach, you historically have not been the biggest, haven't given a lot of accreditation. Did I say that right? To post-match interviews and comments. And sometimes it's hollow, sometimes it's fluff. You're just saying what you need to say and you don't give it too much thought. Do you still feel that way about what was said yesterday? Like
No.
really informally?
No. The fact that they showed up and that the coach and the players didn't, first and foremost, is sends a concrete message in and of itself, more so than and let's be honest, game in, game out. You hear a lot of the recycled language in these post-game and pre-game interviews and so forth. This was notably not that. It was not only senior leadership standing up, but coming with stark, clear, definitive statements about concrete aspects of the management of the league in which we play. And so this was a humongous departure from the routine hollow nonsense we often see and that people are just obligated to do, with doing the opposite, providing aggressive clarity and targeted attacks on areas that they see or they saw and they are saying is insufficient and frankly not up to the standard that you would expect at a top tier competition.
Yeah, and I think it was thank you. And Frederic, I think I saw something from Romeo Agresti earlier today sharing some commentary around how Elkin is just 100% behind everything that Chiellini and Comoli said, and that he went in. I don't know if he went into the locker room or not to provide support of the team. But do you have any kind of insight there into what's happening with Elkan, or what he did yesterday?
He spoke to the team briefly, I think about a minute and halftime. Something not as, not poetic in a sense. He just said, "Come on, guys, don't worry. We'll just keep on fighting." A bit of a nudge in their direction and a bit of a motivational kind of speech, let's say. But after the final whistle, he went completely mayhem. He was very, 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 very pissed off. He demanded to speak to the referee and the VAR people. They didn't allow him to. He said, "Then I want Rocky on the phone," which didn't happen. And from what they tell me is when he drove home, he had a call with Gravina, where he very elaborately expressed his disappointment. Afterwards, Rocky called him and Comoli back, and they agreed not to respond to Rocky's phone call. So
Why?
that's all
Why do you think?
I have no idea. I think they just went above his head to the bigger person in charge there, to the head of the FIGC, not to waste their efforts on Rocky or whatever, because as we know, Rocky will quit after this season, maybe, I hope, even earlier.
Yeah.
So I think they just decided to go for the head honcho and document that well, because I don't know if people know this, but if you, as an owner or CEO of a club, get in contact with the head of a FIGC, it all gets documented in the sense that is it recorded? I don't know, but there are transcripts, there are things. They usually follow up with an email summarizing what has been discussed. And I think that was the way to go for them, which makes me even think that they might even take legal action should need be. So I think it was just them covering their asses, making their steps retraceable, and having sure that FIGC or whoever in Rocky's name took this as a serious allegation and something that we very, 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 very are keen on to have pursued. So I think, hats off to them by doing so.
Zach, I want you, for people listening in audio format only, as soon as Frederic mentioned legal action, Zach just gave the heaviest eye roll I've seen in quite some time. So can you please give some commentary to go along with your facial expression?
There's absolutely no legal action that would accomplish anything. What are you going to do? Not make Champions League and sue the FIGC for 60 million euro because of referee decisions due to a broken structure? And frankly, La Pena, who, and we can talk about that moment with Kalulu, but what are you going to object to? There's no recourse. You can't go back and legislate games or give points back. And Roki came out and said we're sorry. It's not like he defamed anybody or anything like that. There's literally no avenue for legal recourse from this game whatsoever.
I'm sorry, but it's not just because of this game. I think it's Juventus. If they should pursue that, they're given right to demand an investigation, because this is not just one game that went awry or whatever. So I think in order to have an investigation started or have something set in motion, you should have some backup and you should have the proper credentials in order to enforce that. It was the same. They did the same with Calciopoli. And if other teams can do it, I don't see the reason why as to we wouldn't be able to do so.
But this is my issue. This is my issue with this is everyone's, and rightfully so, we're talking Inter Juve. This is not an Inter Juve problem or only a Juve problem. Every week, some of the examples that Kevin had, even earlier today in the Parma match, or you go to Napoli last week. I mean, there are just boneheaded, game-defining penalties or red cards. It's a systemic problem. Now, if you want an investigation, what are you going to do? Investigate the guy who's got 1 foot out the door already? I mean, you could. And even if you decide that Roki was corrupt, he's gone, and you're not going to change anything. So it just seems like it's a lot of hot air for nothing. The system is very clearly broken in terms of referees, VAR usage, and I want to be very clear on this because Kevin used the right term. He said that players are incentivized to dive and simulate. That is the truth, and it goes way deeper than that. Saying it is not, in my opinion, good enough, because we're all product of our incentives in life and in sport. And when the players week in and week out have shown that simulation, as embarrassing as it would be, if that was my son, I would be like, don't ever do that again. I'm embarrassed to be associated with you, seeing you dive and celebrate. But there's so much money and consequence in getting that call in your favor that everyone on every team, Juventus is no exception, does it. There's no penalty for them to do it retroactively. Nobody except against Chico and Yildiz, it seems, gets cards for simulation in games. The system has set up a world where La Pena, as to that call, not talking about his game performance, but as to the Kalulu call, I kind of understand at the moment. VAR can't help him. His linesman didn't help him. No retroactive penalty to Bastoni is going to help him. And he's on the wrong angle to see it, a foul that we've seen called, 8 million times a game? Like that, like in an obvious situation, if anyone is going to respond to me and say that their stomach didn't twist when they saw that in real time, you're lying.
No, but Zach, I'll give you that though. I mean, because it's in real time. He may have thought that Kalulu tripped him. It may have looked like that to him, right? How close there were and how well he timed his fall. He didn't fall because his Kalulu's wrists nudged against his forearm. He fell because he made it look like a trip and he knew Kalulu was already on a yellow. Mm-hmm. So let's say he makes that call and he's unable to get assisted by VAR, right? Like, unfortunate, sucks. But you have Bastoni coming up and signing for the card, which is a bookable offense. Mm-hmm. So if you have integrity as a ref, you're booking him, and there's 2 reds in that instance because Bastoni was on a yellow already. And then you're followed by the countless other situations in that match, seeing Boga get ripped down, Openda get ripped down, the non-McKennie call on McKennie, the hand, like, we're not going to relive all of this. But like in that moment, if La Pena had screwed that up, but had integrity with everything else, the way the match had flowed, I think we'd be having a different discussion today. But it's the body of everything, and then the issue with VAR of not being able, like, as a system, not just against anti-Juve, but for Serie A and football in general, that you can't review a second yellow is ridiculous because it leads to a red card.
The rules are flawed, but the way they are applied against Juve differ from the way they are applied against other teams. And that's just a fact. If you look at Parma, they had some awful decisions as well this season, but they had some, lucky ones in their advantage as well. It at the end, it kind of balances out, so to speak. Even if it's a clusterfuck of a regulation, it somewhat balances out. But if you look at what happened to us just this season, or even worse, from when Spalletti became our coach, I mean, just look back at all those games since Spalletti took over the helm of Juventus. It's unbelievable. We're talking 9 to 12 points here. And that's a huge, that's not something that happens because the ref is biased or because the ref is incompetent. This is a grander scheme of things that need to be investigated, because to an outsider, it looks as though Juventus, at all costs must not get that Champions League qualification or whatever, or must not try to compete, whatever it is that we're competing for in Serie A. But if you add those points up, and I'm not saying, every linesman, every ref, every player has an off day, sometimes can be helped by VAR, sometimes can. That's a whole other discussion. Mm-hmm. But yesterday I saw 4 to 5 blatant missed calls that it wasn't even funny anymore, that you just knew that he was looking for something not to give us or to give us. That just looks like downright corruption. That's just downright corruption. And
No,
I'm a
but
Juventus fan, so
you say downright corruption, and again, you're focusing on one game against Juventus. You if you project
no, I'm
this,
focused
no, you
about 10
project this.
games.
No, yeah, you project this across the season. It's not. It might be the worst for Juventus and whatever. I'm not going to fight you on that because I don't have enough data to prove you wrong. But I do know it happens to every team in Serie A, such that coaches and organizations, more so than I've ever heard in the past, or at least in the recent memory, have talked about the quality of refereeing in Serie A and the structures around them. And the structures around them, like when you can use VAR and how you can't use VAR and this stuff like that, has been piss poor. And what I'm just saying is, if we want to, I guess I don't prescribe to the conspiracy against Juve victim situation. I think it is there's a institutional sickness in the refereeing and the application of VAR in Italy that's bigger than just the 9 points or whatever that Juventus have been
I think
screwed
I'm
out
going
of.
to use the line that I've used a couple times throughout this season, and that this is a situation where I think just multiple things can be true. It can be true that the system is flawed and many teams get screwed. If I'm De Rossi in that Genoa-Napoli match where I saw my team just claw out that match against the defending champs for that horseshit of a penalty call to come up there at the end, I'd be punching my fist through a cement wall. There's been some truly atrocious things that have happened. You see the non-calls against Inter's defense in that Parma game where you get yellow cards instead of red cards, tripping the last defender earlier in the season, right? But the weight and consistency upon which we face it, and again, not just one or two matches, but 5 or 6 matches, and again, going back to what I started with, upwards of anywhere from 7 to 9 points directly impacted by referees. And I think there is still an opportunity where there's an anti-Juve agenda in certain situations, and Italian refereeing and officiating as a whole is just a dumpster fire.
I just add that what Fred was alluding to earlier about taking official legal channels or appropriate legal channels, not for legal reasons, but so that things are documented. Again, maybe my phrase for the day is tipping point, right? Maybe it's a tipping point here on a larger scale because this issue with VAR has carried on in Serie A for years, right? And we've talked about it year after year after year with no change because there was no impetus for change. But if we are at this tipping point and there is an impetus for change, I'm glad that we are out in front of it. That's on the that's on the more macro level. On the more micro level, we can't say nothing can be done because I think the first damn thing that has to happen is Kalulu be available for the Como game. I think that red card needs to be rescinded. I don't know that they can do that, but I think that is the right.
I don't think there's a precedent for it.
No, I know, but I think isn't there enough evidence at this point? Haven't we seen enough camera angles? That he didn't even deserve either of those yellow cards, in my opinion. I think.
I mean that like.
But
I mean, but even like
Barella should take up improv acting.
The Kalulu thing. I mean, we can. That was the most blatant one. But if you look at, I mean, the Openda foul was literally 20 seconds before the winning goal fell. The McKennie foul in the penalty box should have been a penalty where we would score the 3-2 at that point, if I'm not mistaken. You have Kalulu's first yellow, which was never a yellow in any way, shape, or form because he didn't even put his body up there. So if you add all these things up to the bigger picture, if you take a look at the other games, if you take a look at, and you logically try to find an explanation, because we all agree that people can make mistakes, the VAR can make mistake, whoever. But if you look at it and it happens systematically and it happens so many times during a 90-minute game, then, you know, that's me thinking like there's a different agenda here. And it happened to Genoa, it happened to Parma as well. But, you know, on the other hand, Genoa 3 weeks before that got a free penalty from a VAR decision as well, whereas Parma got a legally scored goal, which was booked offside by VAR, which wasn't offside. So you have all these things, but especially to club as Juventus, it's a matter of life and death, because not making the Champions League or not being able to compete for top spots in Serie A because you get disadvantaged by referees or institutions, that's a whole other crime. That's a whole other crime. And I agree that refereeing and the VAR needs to be revised, but a lot of clubs have been asking for that for the whole season. And the FIGC just says, no, we won't do it in the course of a season. We'll do it in the summer break, which is absolutely and completely mental. Because if you see that something's not working, the club's saying, guys, come on, this VAR thing is not working. Please, let's sit down together and see how we can. No, we won't do that. We don't have time for that. That is just you latching onto something, a weapon you have that you need to exercise
Yep.
at a given time. So I don't know.
So let's transition just to some of the other reactions that came out, not just from our camp, but from journalists, from other pundits. I really like what we heard from Hernanes on DAZN, and I think Frederic, you shared this with our group. And Hernanes, I know his Juve career was limited at best, but he is a pretty remarkable guy. He's actually, for those who don't know, has made Piemonte region his home and has opened up a winery in kind of the Langhe area, where there's all these famous wineries and vineyards in the Piemonte region. And he calls it his home. He's got a couple restaurants in Turin, but he joined DAZN as an analyst and as a pundit this season. And yesterday, probably not getting his quote exact, but something to the effect of, if I'm contacted again by DAZN to comment on football, I'm not going to. This is not football. Change the regulations. Stop penalizing the same teams over and over again. So those are the words from Il Profeta. We heard words. Yeah, go ahead.
I saw it live. It was good to see, because you had Christian Brocchi there as well, the ex-Milan player, and he was kind of in agreement with the fact that these calls were dubious, but he was trying to, push it to the more democratical side, where Hernanes just came in with the sledgehammer and just said, like, no, this is just not true. And then he responded, and then they basically cut him off because he was going on a rant about the Lazio game, the Sassuolo game, the Verona game, whatever we had. But he was right. He was right. And I think it was Giaccherini who even said, on live TV, you're absolutely right. So
yeah, and it like, for the U.S. Audience, I mean, we get a Paramount Plus feed, and there's an analyst, Mike Grella, who was a professional to some degree, and don't usually agree a lot of what he has to say, and he's been very critical about Juve throughout this season, and understandably so. But I mean, being pretty vocal that this was not just 10 versus 11. He even said, like, this was 10 versus 12 yesterday, and at full strength sides, this Juventus team would have won the match just because the refereeing was appalling, and it was a poor performance, even though they found a way to get the win amid everything that was going on. But they did not look like the team that will lift the Serie A trophy at the end of the season. I think that's a foregone conclusion at this point. We had Del Piero speaking out yesterday as well. Zach, did you see Del Piero's words?
I saw them, but I do not recall them immediately.
Jack, did you see them by chance?
I did not.
No. Well, he was speaking, he had some choice words for Christian Kivu, which is where I was trying to go with this, right? Yeah. So Kivu, of course, just making some snide comment around, the contact was minimal, but like keep your hands at home. But that's not a foul. Arm brushing against arm is not a foul, right? Like this is a contact sport, and if contact is the reason for foul, it's appalling. And I think it was pretty pathetic that he could justify that in that way. And Del Piero was very, very critical of Kivu and saying that over the next couple of days, he better come out and kind of take that back or have a different perspective, because that's not indicative of this sport that he grew up playing and what we are all really craving to see when we tune in every weekend.
Wasn't it Kivu who not too long ago said like, oh, when we benefit from a call from the refs, we're going to come out and say, I'm sorry. Yeah. The way, we got away with one today.
Yeah.
And of course he has the opportunity to do so yesterday. And he says that.
Mr. Hypocritical. And what I like, especially because Kivu's been yapping on about fair play or whatever, but when we were tied to 11 guys, Spalletti literally just demolished him. So Kivu, for me, Inter, nothing. I don't fear them in any way, shape, or form, because yesterday you had a lot of people talking about, oh, but now Inter's going to start this whole new cycle in which we can't touch them, we'll never beat them, or whatever. This is a pathetic team with an even more pathetic coach. This is a team that's at the end of his line, and I'm happy it turned out the way it did yesterday, because I know for a fact that the next time that we all sit, hopefully at the Allianz Stadium again and get to witness a Juve Inter, we'll be the ones laughing and looking down below what Inter is doing. So I'm not too fussed about that, but Kivu was very hypocritical. I felt that Del Piero was a bit too democratic as well.
He's very political.
I want Del Piero to choose some more coarser words at times, but that's who he is. Can't change it. But it was not only him. I looked a bit around Belgian, Dutch TV, German TV. The same L'Equipe was very harsh. So yeah.
Yeah, I saw. I forget who it was. Just some Instagram football influencer personality indicating that he just saw the weakest not a Juve fan, just the weakest red card of his life. And if he were a Juve supporter, he just said, like, my head would implode and like it would just be the death of me if that's something that I would have witnessed. But look, I mean, I think that the point of talking about other perspectives is that this is not just a selfish, like, Juve against the world thing, which we have found ourselves in, right? Juve contro tutti, right? This is not exactly that. There's an element of it for sure. But when you see Gazzetta, when you see Tuttosport, when you see other analysts and people unrelated with Juve and just neutrals commenting on what was witnessed yesterday, this is just bigger than just our club. And we've got to fight for our club, but something's really got to change with Italian football. And
that's kind of my point, Kevin, is because when you have one of, if not the biggest game of the season, the Derby d'Italia, considering where things are in the table, not just for Juventus and Inter, but
Roma just scored. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about the implications of those games in a second. But when I think it was Comoli said we lost 3 points, but Italian football lost even more. I think that was Comoli, and it's true. It's like the implications on Napoli and Milan, who are trying to fight with Inter, they're affected. Their fans are affected. The integrity of the sport, the table, the reputation of the league domestically and internationally, experience obviously of Inter players who are fighting out there and trying to compete. Juve fans, I think, universally from a Serie A institutions and fandom perspective, it undermines so much of what sport is supposed to be about, fairness and enjoyment and passion. Again, which is why my focus has been holistically on the system, because that's where the problem is. And we got hard done by it bad yesterday, but it's not going, even if they fired La Pena and Roki says, I quit today, that would not change the sickness in the system. I mean, I think we have to be focused at that high level aggressively, because that's the only way things will change. And not for Juventus, but for everyone, for the sport, to elevate Serie A, to have at least some reputation of fairness of sport, because things like this and how it's pervasive globally and has over the last 24 years, that really hurts the reputation and the image of our league. Not of Juventus, but Serie A in general. Like, that's a real black mark.
I mean, it just builds upon everything that. Sorry, Jack. Just real quick. I mean, it just builds upon everything that we've seen with the downfall of not just Serie A, but flowing through into the Italian national team, right? Like, on the brink of missing out on a third World Cup, we're seeing a real lack of quality, like young Italian players come through. We have issues with the stadiums and how it takes years upon years upon years and turns into nothingness of trying to get stadiums approved. The state of refereeing, the bureaucracy that happens, how teams systematically kind of get poked at and inspected. It's just everywhere you look. It's amateur hour, right? And it goes to like how we secure television rights, right? Like, Italy's one of the most popular destinations in the world. The food, the culture, the history, the people, the mountains, the sea, the wine, everything that goes into it, right? You don't think that unto itself is a marketable product, and the way that the Premiership has been able to get the TV rights in every corner of the globe to be the most watched league on the face of this planet. I mean, it's embarrassing what they're unable to do with the product that they have. But anyway, yeah, Jack, sorry, you were going to say something.
Yeah, a bit of a tangent to what Zach brought up, and kind of pull on a thread he mentioned earlier. But I'm glad you spoke up, because I can shorten my tangent now. I think this is a really clear example, Zach mentioning the system, of how the system has a profound impact on the individual and how the individual approaches the sport. And by that, I mean how we're conditioning players. Because Zach earlier made this statement that just kind of kept resonating with me about, like, if I was Bastoni's father, right, and he did that, I would be like so angry with him. And I started thinking, yeah, that's 100% true. But how does a professional footballer playing for Inter get to the point? They probably signed when he was young, right? He gave up time with his family, maybe a social relationship with friends, time with girlfriends, whatever it was. He gave up so much of his youth, of his life, to play this sport that he must love in order to put that much time and energy into, to now not have enough respect for the game he's playing, or being conditioned to the point where you're going to dive like that. Because to your point earlier about how much money is involved in this, right? This is Inter Juve, right? What a big deal this is. But in a moment like that, to not only disrespect yourself and your sport to that degree, but then to turn around and celebrate, ask for a card and celebrate. Like, what happened? How is he conditioned to get to that point? That's where the system really meets the individual, right? And we see, yes, Zach, those systemic changes need to happen, but they need to happen across the entire world of football, right?
That's my point, though, Jack. And I think you said it. I think you said it better than I did. But the system, as it is right now, is end justifies the means. There's no penalty for doing it, so people will, because it gets them a noticeable advantage. They're not just doing
anything they
because-
can to win.
Yeah.
And to,
There's so much
the
money
word
at stake. There's so much
incentivized
money
comes
at
back.
stake that
Yeah.
they have that they will do whatever they can to win. And they are being allowed to cheat by a system that does not penalize it. It's been decriminalized effectively by, and then Roki, and this is what there's some things you
Unless
said
you're
good.
Chico
And
or
some things,
because you get yellow cards for diving.
well, let's not talk too
simulation.
much about Chico. That dude is like the poster child on the Juve front for doing the exact same thing.
No, I know, and it drives me
cuckoo.
nuts. And I know it drives all of us
nuts. But
yeah.
it is by default and by definition cheating. But nobody punishes it. So you're going to do it because it gives your team an advantage. And he celebrates because he doesn't care that he cheated. He got his team an advantage that, guess what, Jack? They won the game. He wins. He's not going to get penalized and suspended after the fact because there's no precedent for it and there's no rule about it. So go ahead, Frederick.
I dive too. I get the diving as a whole. I get that because you try to make the best out of a situation where you can gain benefit by, and people call it cheating. Oftentimes it's not cheating because we see everything in very fast play, but often when you're on the pitch and you're in full velocity and just that little, twitch or that little bit of a knock can be very ugly. So I wouldn't call it, but the celebrating part to me, I never, ever, ever, ever did that. And granted, there was no VAR in my time or whatever, but
Yeah.
I never did that just because if there's something, and there was a touch by Kalulu, that touch warrant, the falling and rolling for 7 meters? Of course not. It was exaggerated. But if you have a referee that's stupid enough to fall into that trap, that's just one thing. But if you then get up after looking as if a sniper shot you down, but then you automatically get up, you start clamoring for a card, which in that perspective, you should receive one by just asking for it. And then celebrating as if you won the Champions League. That to me is something that is inherent in Italian football culture, and especially against Juventus. Because I'm 100% sure that if this would have happened against Roma, Napoli, whatever, he wouldn't be all this. It just wouldn't happen. It's because of the hate relationship. But I don't think that any player on our team would have done the same as Bastoni would have done. And I just hate the fact that Bastoni only has 2 knees, because if he'd had 5 ACLs he could blow out, which is what I was hoping for, because he lost all my respect. I'm not a petty kind of guy. I understand the sport. I understand its intricate moments and whatever. But if you do that, no matter which team you're on, you automatically lose my respect and have nothing good to say for you. I've even gone so far as to say that I'm gonna support Ireland in the qualifying games. I don't want Italy to go. I don't want the FIGC to have anything. I don't want to see Bastoni on a pitch in a World Cup in the United States. I want him nice at home with an ice cold knee pack on his knee. No, I'm done. Just too far.
I would only push back on one thing, Fred. I think this sport will always have areas of gray where we argue. Okay, whether it was a referee decision, a foul called or not called. But I think there are certain things that are still, no pun intended, black and white. And I do believe yesterday that La Pena was absolutely, there's your plug, Zach. I do believe yesterday that La Pena was influenced not by Kalulu's arm, but by the way Bastoni kicks his foot out as if he's been tripped. Because he's on the other side of him.
It wasn't the arm. He couldn't even see the arm. It wasn't the arm.
That's the black and white area where I have a problem. Right? I'm all fine. I'm all for it. There's going to be some gamesmanship, right? Step on foot. I'll even use the example of the foul on Vlahovic that should have been a PK against Fiorentina. To me, they were both pulling. right? Is it a foul? Yes. There's some gamesmanship in there when Vlahovic goes down. He's a big man. He didn't need to go down quite that easily because he hit the side of his knee, right? So there's always going to be gamesmanship. And those are the areas of gray where we'll continue to argue. And I'm fine with that in the sport. What I don't like is the intentional diving, the kicking out of the foot, the flopping. And we've had players, we talk about Chico now, we could talk about Juan Cuadrado in the past, who were masters at this, right? And I hated it even when we did it and got the calls. They always, to me, were, I don't want that as part of the game, right? For the love of the game, I don't want that as part of the game. That doesn't belong there. Some of the gamesmanship, I do think will always be part of the game, and those gray areas are where we're always gonna argue.
Yeah, and it is an element of the game, and it's never going to go away. But again, getting back to the system, there are systematic things you can do to mitigate its prevalence within the match, right? It's like you look at, I think, the past iteration of the World Cup, right? I think they were giving out yellow cards if you approach the referee if you were not a captain. And after a couple yellow cards get shown, you start incentivizing a certain behavior of not approaching the referee. Right?
Wow,
Kevin. If you start to have systems where you when you're reviewing things and it's obvious a player is making a mountain out of a molehill and flopping, they don't get that call. Or if you're starting to give a lot of yellows throughout the course of a season because of obvious simulation, you start to do that. And maybe if that was a part of the way that the referees are being instructed to interpret the rules and enforce them, Bastoni's not doing that yesterday. But we are where we are.
Or if you give a retroactive.
And you think VAR would be able to actually make this better, but it's getting worse and worse and worse because for whatever reason, the idiots who are looking at this thing interpret things in slow motion. I don't know. I'm just going to stop.
I'm with Zach, though, and I know exactly where you're going, Zach, right? Retroactive cards and fines. They talked about it, and then they just never followed through. That kind of stuff will stop it. Second yellow, which is a red, Bastoni's out of the next game and gets fined. You give that a few seasons and watch how some of the behavior changes.
Give that 2 weeks. It's just like
people are product. To my point earlier, the longer term change that we need to have, we need a longer term impact. So this is not something that we're teaching, teens to do in high school and college and, elite players in Europe and South America and everywhere. We need to remove this from the culture. It's a cancer on the culture of this sport.
Well, what I find very interesting is if there are several teams begging FIGC to do something about the rules because they're too manipulative in a sense, and they asked him to review and just update them, and the FIGC then blatantly says, nah, we're not going to do that. That should already give you a feeling of the sense of where we're heading as a football culture in Italy. Because if I'm the captain of FIGC or referee department or whatever, and I have 6-7 teams shouting at me saying, hey, we need to look at those VAR decisions and when they're implemented or how they're implemented or when they can be implemented, and you just say, no, I don't have time for that, I won't sit with you at the table to discuss that, then it's a lost battle. And then you incentivize the players to do so because they know, like Zach eloquently said, that there's no penalty. But what bothers me is when Yildiz does it, and Yildiz does it as well. We're not going to be holier than thou, but Yildiz does it. But he gets a yellow card.
Yeah.
He gets a yellow card as the rule book dictates. But why isn't that applied when we're playing against the likes of Inter or other teams versus other teams? That's what bothers me, because you should have some organ saying, look, this is not right. We'll have to turn that back somehow or somewhat, or we have to do something about this issue at hand. But it just, gets swept under the rug as if it's of no concern to anyone, which to me is something that also Kivu feeds by saying, but there was a touch. That's completely bypassing the situation and the problematics we have.
Absolute nonsense.
if we keep on bickering about whether it was or it wasn't a foul in the broader sense of things, then these issues will never be resolved. And it's kind of nice that the Inter fans and the Inter players and management very very conveniently choose their moments when it suits them best. I would have had more respect for somebody coming out and saying, okay, this was a harsh decision. It possibly wasn't the right decision, and it influenced the game, because that's what happened. And you don't have to say that we were better, you were better, or what would happen if. No, just state the facts. And then we can have a constructive conversation towards the end of the season by seeing how we can remedy all this bullshit, because there is a lot of remedying needed, I think.
So I'd like to discuss our players, a couple individuals, and just the overall mentality, how we approach the match. Like we're not going to do play-by-play review. I don't think anybody has come for that or wants to listen to it in light of everything that we witnessed and the fallout from it. But before we get into that, is there anything related to post-match commentary, anything that you've read, any kind of broader systematic challenges within Serie A and the officiating that we didn't cover?
Yeah, this just one thing I want to mention, that Fred called Kivu a hypocrite. If anybody missed it, 2011 Inter's treble season, Kivu punched a player in the box and got away with it. I believe it was a player from Parma. Swings at him, almost knocks him out. Nothing ever happened. Same guy who just came out and said, well, there was a touch, so it was a foul. Sorry.
What was Spalletti, I think, against was it after the Lazio match when he gestured towards kissing a journalist and that's contact?
Yeah, it was. And there's also, which I find very interesting. I find very interesting the fact that Alcom pushed for a meeting with all the CEOs of the clubs to get this addressed, because there is a law in the FIGC or wherever that if you have a certain number of autographs from CEOs, then an emergency meeting must be held. I think he's pushing for that at that point, and he has a lot of other CEOs or owners that called him today as well with the same questions or the same issues. So it's something that's spreading, and there's a bit of an incentive and a bit of a movement forming around that, which I like, and I hope it'll help football, or the way football is played or perceived, to evolve in a better manner and way.
And I think, look, if we want to take the parenting aspect of it, right? Mistakes. I mean, if you want to just call it, we'll just summarize mistakes. We had a good hour-long discussion, but we'll say mistakes happen. What do? It's important that we learn from them when we do better. So if that's what if we use this as a rallying cry to make meaningful change to a system that we all agreed is broken, then that will benefit the sport and Juventus and every team in Serie A in the long term. So you hate to be the impetus behind such a change, because that means you are hard done by. But let's take that momentum, and with Rocky leaving and stuff, there's the opportunity for change in a positive direction, and certainly whatever they decide in terms of stuff, an equitable application of it as well, which would be appreciated.
All right, let's move into the match for a little bit here before we talk about implications moving forward and some of the very important games that await us. Up until the red card, it was a fun match, wasn't it?
Proper derby.
We have the obviously like the Cambiasso di Gregorio error, which I think we should talk about just for a moment, because it merits that discussion. But just generally speaking, like, we looked good. Right? Inter goes up 1-0 on that mistake with an XG of 0. They were winning 1-0 with an XG of 0.
I mean, but look, I would love to hear Frederick's analysis of Di Gregorio on that goal. But those things happen, right? I mean, we've seen our team is the definition of letting in goals with 0 XG, against. But we were playing great. There was fight. It was open. It was awesome. It was really enjoyable. And even after the sending off, we played great football with 10 men, organized on defense, picking our times to move forward, and then being extremely decisive when we did, scoring once, having multiple opportunities and uncalled fouls that would present us with other scoring opportunities to move ahead. So I think, not to analyze the game, I think the one thing I want to emphasize is Frederick said this is the Juventus we know and that we want and that we love. That I hope, and I started the episode with this, I hope is not lost in all of this controversy, because, and this is my claim, our season never rested on the outcome of yesterday's game. Win, lose, or draw, where we finish up on the table, will not be determined by the result of that game. The way we played, the way we dealt with adversity in that game was amazing. And how we respond to what happened in this game is going to have way more of an effect on where we stand at the table at the end of the season than the fact that we lost, is my claim.
There was breakfast this morning with the players, Spalletti. I think Modesto was there as well. Chiellini wasn't. Comoli as well, and Elkan. And they basically made a pact saying that whatever happens, we won't break. We'll stand united. We'll give every game everything we got until the bitter end, fino alla fine, even though we are overcome with, hardship and bias and even a bit of, let's say, robbery. We'll just go in fearless and see what happens, and that's at what Alcon said. Alcon was pretty sure that they'll make Champions League. And I'm going to have to check the quote. I'm sorry. And something along the lines of, this is just a stepping stone. So to me, very nice of him to be present, talk to the players.
That is good. That's leadership. I've been very critical of his leadership, justifiably so, but that's a good moment from him.
Yeah, this is exactly what you want to see, and you need a little bit of leadership in these moments. This is, from a sporting perspective, you kind of call this the Rocky response, right? What happens when you're down like that? Down on one knee. Do you have the leadership in your locker room? Do you have your leadership in coaching and in management to look up and get back up and say, you better throw more at me than that if you think you're going to take me down? And that's why the old lady never dies. Right, it's going to take a hell of a lot more than one Inter game. To Zach's point, like, this is not going to define our season, but how we respond to this now will define our season.
Yeah,
how we approach these 2 Champions League games, and also how we, welcome Como to the Allianz. I hope not an empty seat in the house next week.
And then away at Roma.
Yeah,
right.
Sure, it's going to.
We're still in control of our own destiny. It just got harder.
Yeah,
what did we say at the beginning of the season, Kevin? I think you and I were the one who said it. Our season is defined not in the minimal big games you play over the course of the season, but what you do week in and week out, especially against the mid and bottom tail tables. That's no different. And we have an opportunity to, like you said, against Roma, it's still a lot of games to be played, points to be won and lost. The Jack, I think, hit the nail on the head that how we respond to this. And so, like, I can just kind of see Spalletti's message to the team, and I don't know if he's come out and spoken yet after the result. But if I'm a coach and I look at the fight that my team had, I am applauding them and celebrating them after that game, and I'm sitting Kalulu down and saying, "You did nothing wrong, my man," because you could see what it meant to Kalulu in that moment to be sent off in that manner. And the only sort of mentality I am concerned about is whether that moment crushed Kalulu a little bit because of how big and unfair it was. And so if I'm Spalletti, I'm sitting him down and saying, man, you did nothing wrong. I got your back.
This potentially could be the spark that
get our boy Kalulu off the pitch, man.
No, that's all. Yeah.
Minute of the entire game, he has to get sent off for that nonsense.
Off this season was to send him off with a red.
Sorry, Frederic.
No. I just feel that this could be like Jack said, a tipping point in the sense that this could be kind of the spark that we could possibly need in this difficult, string of difficult games that we have. This could be something that ignites our inner pride and rocky emotional response to injustice, and we might fire from more cylinders than we thought we had prior to this game. So it could be something that could be beneficial in the long run for us, for having that sense of revenge, that unjust feeling that still, is sticking in the middle of your throat like that because it was force fed to you. So you never know. But I find it very, very uplifting that they stand as a unity. And I couldn't be much more proud of my team, and for the first time in several years as well, of management, because of the way they spoke, the way they acted, and the way that they supported not only the players but also the fans, because Kamoli said a few words about the fans as well, which means to me that he actually does care. And if we all have the noses in the same direction, then we could potentially see some nice things happening for us.
Yes, nice. I think you mentioned it Thursday, Fred. It might have been on Bepe's show. For those of you who don't know, these guys join Uncle Bepe on Thursdays for Juve Talk. You made a comment about this team can only go as far as they can overperform, or something to that effect, that they only perform consistently when they're overperforming. And my hope, what you're saying now, is that now that we all have our noses in the right direction, this can be the impetus to continue to overperform the talents that we have and push to the end of the season. And maybe
I just hope Deacon starts overperforming as well.
I do. I don't want to
All
derail.
right, let's get into it. Let's just stop tiptoeing around it and okay. So there's two specific things I want to make sure that we talk about, and then if there's anything else about the match, guys, let's feel free to air it out. Let's talk about the own goal and related Di Gregorio's performance on the night, and I also want to give some time just to Locatelli's performance as well. So I'm going to kick things off with the own goal, and Frederic, just to maybe soften some of what you're about to say, because after that, Di Gregorio actually, I mean, whether you can call them world-class saves or not, he kept us in that match. He did have some nice saves, particularly in that second half, where maybe a different performance of Di Gregorio would have seen those goals go in as well. But my thing with the own goal that we conceded, it's not so much that those were obvious errors as we've committed in other matches. Locatelli holding on to the ball too long against Lazio and getting stripped and that turning into a goal, obvious error. Cambiasso passing a square ball across the center of defense with an oncoming player that gets intercepted and they score, obvious error. Cambiasso finds himself in an unfortunate spot where that shot cross gets deflected off of him, no fault of his own, when Di Gregorio's already leaning in the other direction, right? We can criticize it for being like the most unathletic display of trying to kick save that. It looked really, really poor. But it, like, my biggest thing is that it wasn't so much stupid errors, but just that moment just sums up their season, that the two of them just find themselves in a spot where they are the centerpieces for conceding a goal like that away at the San Siro when you've been dominating the first 12 to 15 minutes of that match. And it just like encapsulates what they've been doing all season.
And the question is, would it happen with a Carnesecchio or a Vicario in goal? I don't think it would.
I think some of us, if we were lying down, may have been able to kick save that. I mean, but
that's just my point. And I don't mean like I got a lot of hateful Instagram messages today at the Scoop. Be sure to put in your own hateful message if you want. You can.
I even
follow us
sent
at
you
the
one.
Scoop. You
Completely
did?
unrelated to the game, but just because I wanted to send you one.
Ah, okay, that's nice. Thank you. I haven't checked, but I'll check later. But No, I just feel that, I'll die on this hill. He's a poor keeper. And I kind of disagree with the things that you said, Kevin, about the good saves that he did make, because they were all literally pointed straight at him. And even how he parried the shots, in my opinion,
I
weren't.
think you're exaggerating
Excuse me,
bit there,
sir.
my friend.
No,
The
no,
Çalhanoğlu upper 90 save was fantastic. And then what was it? The header from Bišćak.
No, the header. No, the header was. No, that wasn't a good save. Sorry, that wasn't a good save. I'll agree with the Çalhanoğlu one, but the header one, the way he parried, he made sure that ball went to the post twice. You should parry that wide, not back into somebody. The way he saves it looked clumsy and awful. It was just, a spur of the moment reaction, but no keeper pedigree in that, in my opinion. I just feel he's overrated. He's not good. We'll leave it at that. But
I say the difference is that the mistakes he makes are amateur mistakes. The saves he makes are saves you would expect your keeper to make. I don't think, barring the Çalhanoğlu shot, which I think that is a difficult save, I don't think he did anything extraordinary that you would not expect of a professional goalkeeper playing in Serie A. It's not there's never a wow save. We haven't had a wow save, right? I know it's kind of a lame, adjective to use, but the mistakes.
1-1 Napoli scored. Sorry.
that's good. That's good if it stays that way. Sorry, Jack. Go on.
Yeah, sorry.
No, we don't ever see any. We see a lot of wow mistakes, like WTF mistakes, but no saves that make me say, "Oh my God, I'm so glad he's in between the sticks."
So I think we all agree, unless someone's going to disagree with me, that he should have done better on that first one. I would contend, and we don't have to fight about it, thought he was very good. And I was like writing down in my notes that once we, at halftime, that there's going to be a moment or two in the second half where Di Gregorio is going to have to come up with a big save, because down a man against Inter, that they're going to have a couple humongous opportunities. I thought we'd get away with it. But then you come to the winning goal and you see a screened goalkeeper who does not even move, he doesn't see the ball until it's in the back of the net, from a well-placed but not overly fantastic or hard-hit shot. And I part of me is just so angry to see him not do anything that I want to criticize him for that moment. But at the same time, I want to hold myself back if I'm being unreasonable. So maybe, Kevin, I'll go to you first, since you've been just doing such a good job hosting. Maybe I'll host back at you for a second.
Sure.
Do we write off that last goal against Di Gregorio because he was screened and couldn't see it? Or is it the job of the keeper to track the ball to where he can make a play? And he should have done better.
In the moment, I didn't blame him, right? Like it was written, right? Like we had that high of emotion off of Locatelli's goal, and it was just, this is not over. And Zielinski had been Inter's best player on the night. He's had an incredible season for them. He had the space, he had the shot. I don't know how much Di Gregorio could have done with where he found himself. Now, I've played the game. I've never been a keeper. I don't know if his positioning was poor in that moment where he should have had the opportunity to see Zielinski better, to be able to react to a shot, because he was meaningfully outside the box and would have had enough time to hopefully get down. But I'm not thinking that is his fault. I just think it's just unfortunate, and it was just a well-placed shot, and Zielinski took his chance. And we don't do enough of that. We as a team do not do enough of that, of putting low struck balls just like towards the corner from outside the box. We're always playing with it and taking too many touches. I think we could
Locatelli
actually
did.
take an example from what Zielinski did there.
I think the only thing you missed, Kev, is he didn't find the space. He made the space. That is an incredible first touch by Zielinski, and he makes that one touch to open up space for himself to take that shot. And I think that's why Digres late, right? That ball is coming from Digres left, and he's still moving to his right. He hasn't even set his feet properly, and the ball comes back to his left.
Yeah. I mean, he's been a
That was my
punching
point.
bag and just for so many reasons. So I think it'd be easy to blame him. I just don't know how much he realistically could have done with
No,
the
I
way
think-
the players were set
These are-
up.
these-
I think credit
These
goes to Zielinski too.
These are the moments that you can set yourself apart from other keepers and get that 1 point win for your team. And by making I'm not saying that he should have made a save because it was very difficult, but man, at least go for the grass. And oftentimes, and Zach,
Yeah.
Zach can vouch for this. We were saying this during the warm-up at the Napoli game as well, that he just doesn't like when he feels that a shot is not or just too well placed. He doesn't even try. He doesn't even go for it, and that frustrates the hell out of. I mean, Bastoni dived better yesterday than Digre did. So I mean, these are just facts. I mean, I'm not saying that every time you go down when there's a strike that you'll be able to save said ball, but if you don't go for it or you don't even try, then there's literally no chance. And with a bit of luck yesterday, he would have held that one back, and we wouldn't have at least gotten 1 point out of the game, maybe even more. Who knows? Because at that point, you're maybe all fired up, and your enthusiasm gets the better of you, and you never know what happens. I'm, in my opinion, he's just not good enough to count on to get you points throughout the season to make those critical saves that you expect a goalkeeper to make at certain points.
Can I ask a question without derailing the conversation, Kev? Because it's on topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is Digre better than Mattia Perin?
The bullshit.
Yeah, I
Who-
feel.
Do we start asking?
So.
Asking questions who should be starting though?
No, I think you have to start Di Gregorio, considering. I mean, if you think of football players as assets, there's no value in Perin anymore. Di Gregorio, if you want to move on to another goalkeeper or if you want to sell him or something, you have to continue with the message that he's the number one goalkeeper from a resellable asset standpoint, which is a little bit dirty to refer to people in that way, but that's just sort of the nature of European football. And I think the way that Spalletti wants to play Di Gregorio in his characteristics, not necessarily his skill level, but his characteristics more align with how Spalletti wants to play. And so from a coaching and tactical perspective, you start him as well. So he's the keeper we're stuck with.
You also would have to imagine, I think, like Spalletti isn't doing anybody any favors, right? And I think after being with the club for this long, if he had a clear perspective that Perin puts us in a better chance to be winning matches, he'd be starting more matches.
Mm-hmm.
I just think
May I, for the sake of intertwining a scoop moment here, may I tell you guys what Spalletti thinks, at least for next season, or what his plans are? I don't know if they're going to be accepted by management.
No, we don't care to hear this insight.
Yeah, no, this is
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Keep that to yourself.
So Locatelli, next point.
No, please share.
Well, Spalletti wants Perin because Perin was very disappointed that he could not go to Genoa because we didn't get a second goalkeeper in. But Spalletti wants to see Perin move to Genoa or another team in the summer, and then get a good quality keeper in and have Di Gregorio and the new keeper just duke it out in training, and who's better will start. But he wants somebody with more aerial presence and somebody who's a bit more vocal, and he'll decide on that. But I think the parting ways with Perin will be done, and I kind of get this eerie feeling that Spalletti also feels that he is not able to put his whole trust into Di Gregorio as the true number one for Juventus. And I know people are saying Carnesecchi, please get Carnesecchi off your list. We tried 2 summers ago, and we got hit with a 60 million price tag. So I don't think it's gonna be Carnesecchi, in all fairness, but there will be another keeper that will challenge for first spot.
Yep. Excellent. All right. So there were 2 players, I think, who stood out quite well yesterday. You have McKennie picking up 2 assists. You saw the work rate. I mean, he finished. I don't have the stat right in front of me right now, but he finished with running something like 12 kilometers in that match. And then you have Locatelli, who I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I state this right now, based on form, not on who he is holistically as a player, what he's brought to the game over his career, or what his quality and skill set is, but based on form and form alone, has to be considered a top 5 midfielder in Europe right now, for the end of 2025 through what we're seeing now. Not just the statistics that you see with his completed passes to the final third, passing percentages, his takeaways, his long balls, but also just the work rate, the tackle, playing both sides of the ball, his ability to play regista and central defender, and being much more vertical than he's ever been. Spalletti's mark on him has been incredible. He's the player on he's the player on the back of my shirt today, and I'm just, he'll never be able to hold a light towards some of our captains of past, and he never will for as long as he's at this club. But in this moment, and for what we're going through right now, I'm proud he's our captain, and it was a captain worthy performance yesterday. Even if he had not scored that goal, which was just kind of the icing on the cake for him. So I just think McKennie and Locatelli, players who I think received a fair share of criticism over the last couple of years, not being up to Juve standards, being some of the 2 most important players on this side right now is nice to see.
If I
Which
may,
in hindsight,
go
sorry,
ahead, Frederick. No.
Which in hindsight is true, because I was very critical about Locatelli a couple of months ago, just purely because of this reason, because I knew what he was capable of and he just wasn't showing it. And to me, that's even worse. We see oftentimes at Juventus players that we think about that could be of added value to us, but for some reason, be it the heaviness of the shirt or whatever, they don't get to perform said actions. And that gets frustrating. And I had that with Locatelli, because you could clearly see that he was working against himself. He always needed 4 or 5 touches to control the ball, always playing that back ball, while Locatelli is much more efficient and dangerous while playing when playing the ball vertically, playing it in a one-touch momentum or whatever. But he lacked the confidence, and that I can totally understand with the coaches and everything. Now you see a coach that's giving him the freedom, giving him that confidence, and you can see what he means and can do for Juventus. And I am so happy that he does that, because this is the Locatelli I want in my team, because this is the Locatelli that to me is a true captain, is a warrior, is somebody who can make a difference, is the one that can rile up the squad, is the one that can get you points in, because he nearly did so yesterday, and is the one that represents the mentality and the DNA of Juventus. So once again, I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now, Zach can testify to that. Hats off to him. Hats off to him. An amazing turnaround, like a revenge arc you don't even see in Marvel movies anymore. So amazing. Like, hats off to him. And I hope he continues this way, because he was very solid once again.
I would say that yesterday's game was probably one of, if not the best game he's had in his career, from the holistic performance, right? Kevin talked to you about all the passing, number 1 in touches, number 1 on passes on our team, 3rd overall, 17 passes in the final third. I don't remember exactly the stats, but a lot of successful long balls. but also he led the game in defensive contributions from blocks and tackles and recoveries and so on and so forth. It popped up with a goal. Frederick's biggest critique of Locatelli, right, Frederick, is that he doesn't contribute enough in the offensive phase. Comes up at a pivotal moment, down a man when we needed a goal to come on, and you saw what that meant to him as well. And let's talk about the intangibles. So he's got this defense, he does the passing, he scores the goals, but we also talked about him in the past being on the pitch somewhat of a weak leader, or a complaint about him certainly at the beginning of this season is demonstrated weak leadership. At no bigger moment in the season was there than yesterday when we go down a man in the first half, and seeing the team respond certainly has the mark of Spalletti as a mature manager, but also on the pitch as well. Dealing with the ebb and flow of a game over the course of that second half. I thought we saw Locatelli, like Frederic said, urge the team on and put them on his back, and then demonstrate in a big moment by scoring that goal that we can do it through his direct action. And I don't know if I'm going to go so far as Kevin says he's a top 5 midfielder, but as to the body of work that he's produced over the course of his career, this may be his best game by virtue of the direct contributions on the pitch, technically, but also intangibly to the contribution of our team.
Yeah, I think his contributions to the mentality of the team on the field cannot be understated. I also want to take just a moment to go a little further, Zach. I think a lot of this is on Spalletti. I think Spalletti 100% recognized the kind of player he had. I've been a fan of Locatelli for years. I've always defended him. I've always liked him as a Juve player. I liked him as a player on Sassuolo. And if you look back to how he played at his Sassuolo days, to Fred's point, it was very quick. It was very vertical. It was very 1-2 touch. And who was he playing with? He was playing with the likes of Raspadori running up one wing, Berardi on the other, and Scamacca, in front of him. The one year where they had a lot of success, right? I believe. So now he has some of those same pieces now. Spalletti knows the cog and the wheel and how to get it to work. And I think he's also coaching the other players around Locatelli to play to his strengths, to create those offensive movements that are creating chances. And since Spalletti took over, we've seen an increase in chances created, right? And a lot of that does start in that like double pivot. So, not only is he coaching the player, recognizing that he's important to the mentality of the team, but also recognizing his tactical utility on this team and how the ball needs to move through the midfield to create those chances. And I think he's managing the tactical and technical side, but as well as the man side very well here, and really leaning into Locatelli being our captain and showing some of those characteristics. Sorry, go ahead.
No, what I really like about this is that finally we have also a coach, because if you look at Conte, if you look at Motta, if you look at Tudor, they weren't very self-critical. Whereas Spalletti came in, recognized the mistakes he made in the national team. One from them being leaving Locatelli out of it, saying Locatelli is not the player that he needs in that team. Coming back from that decision, being very self-aware and self-critical about the mistakes he makes, and turns it all around. And I think, well, I can say this. I think I can say this. They sat down and Spalletti at a certain point confessed to Locatelli that he made a mistake by not calling him up for the national team, by playing with the way he played with the national team. That was just the wrong choice, and that they could leave that all behind them and start anew. And once they did, I think it was after maybe the 3rd or 4th game when Spalletti was in charge at Juventus, you start seeing that shift in momentum, that boost in awareness, self-confidence. And once again, credits to Spalletti, not only for reviving Locatelli, but reviving so many players, reviving our whole squad. Because what we saw yesterday and in the games before that, this is the Juventus we want, regardless of the outcome, regardless of the result, regardless of the robbery. We want to see, even if we don't have the best players in the world, we want them to see them trying their utmost in order to get a result and not giving up, fighting, competing for something, and just making our jersey wet and doing themselves proud. And my hat's off to Spalletti. I'm forever indebted to him, no matter what happens. I mean, it bears repeating. We mustn't let go of that, because in the past we're overly critical about certain players, or maybe even certain coaches. But now that we have a gem on our hands and somebody who can relate to the Juventus DNA and the way that we as fans want to see the game approach and evolve, to me, is the biggest win of this season, regardless where we land in the table.
I'd like to. I know we got onto the Locatelli thing, rightfully so and deservedly so, and we talked about Spalletti. I don't want the McKennie contribution to be forgotten, based on what Kevin brought up.
Yeah.
Because in McKennie's best season for us, it's when he played right wing back. He had 0 goals, 11 assists, as that wing back, contributing extremely well. And, Frederic, you and I have talked about in some of our shows that, McKennie he's not a complete player. He's got this or he's got that, but he makes up for it in contributing with goals and assists. And earlier on in the season, he wasn't doing that, and we were criticizing him again. But since Spalletti has come, in just that short amount of time, he's racked up as many goal contributions, 11, that he had his entire season where he had his best season for us. I mean, the change in McKennie and his contribution, and not just on the goal contributions, which you cannot undersell, but also in the technical side, an area where, in my mind, I'll be honest with you, I kind of written off that he was going to get any better technically. He kind of has a heavy touch at times, so on and so forth. But his positioning, his technical ability, and his execution in the final third have been better than I've ever seen before, racking up 7 goals, 4 assists in such an abbreviated time frame, with Spalletti as coach, to equal that season total goal contribution is kind of blown my mind at the impact that Spalletti has had on this player, and that obviously is indicative of work that McKennie has put in to improve. And it's just, you don't see that kind of change without the player making that effort, taking those strides, and then producing game in, game out as consistently as he has. I mean, you don't see strikers producing at the rate that he is right now. Even some of the best strikers in the world don't. And so I don't want us to slide that under the rug because of how special he has been to our success lately.
I think he's very happy. He's very happy, McKennie, in the sense that not much has changed apart from the substitution of the coach, in terms of, if you compare the McKennie under Tudor or Motta or whatever. But he's a lot happier, and he clamors about that in interviews. He says Spalletti's the best coach I had. He's like a father figure to me. I love him to death. He's whatever, and they have that same chemistry in the dressing room. But if you, as a coach who comes in this shitstorm of a season that we were having, and still have that impact on a player and allow him to be comfortable with his own performances, with his negative sides, to remedy them, to work hard, to pursue something more than just the next contract extension where you're doing it for money, and actually feel loved and appreciated, that's of unlimited value to me. And that's the kind of man that Spalletti is. He can make you feel very much into a project, into the center of attention, into being the cornerstone that he relies on. The negative part is that he does that on the other hand as well. If you're not on good terms with Spalletti, then you're done. I mean, look at João Mario, for example.
That's what a leader has to do, right? You have to be able to make decisions for what works for your strategy and your approach to the match week in and week out. And I think, Frederic, like your comments about coaches leveling players up, right? And I know Kelly started playing better at the beginning of the season, even prior to Spalletti, but he's continued to perform just as well. And like, Kelly's never going to be Chiellini. Locatelli's never going to be Pirlo. McKennie's not going to be Zidane, but can they be the best versions of who they are as a player? And they're giving their all, and you can tell when a player is out there giving it everything they have and improving weekend to weekend, month to month, season to season. And you see that with these players. And there have been very, very few players who grew with their coaches over the last couple seasons the way that we're seeing that now.
Yeah. When you look at a manager and you evaluate a manager, obviously you're looking at results, But I think what go-to results is, one, do you make individuals better? And are you making the whole greater than the sum of its parts? Allegri version 2, in my opinion, made the whole greater than the sum of its parts, but did not improve individuals. We saw a lot of players generally stay static. Really, the only person, in my opinion, who improved was Rabiot, mainly because he was getting closer to contract years, in my opinion. But then you got Mota and Tudor, and they did not make individuals better, and they did not make the whole greater than the sum of its parts. And now you're seeing Spalletti both make individuals better and make the whole greater than the sum of its parts, which is indicative of the perfect relationship from a club and a coach and its players.
So typically we wrap up our review of the match with the big testicles of the match award, or man, the match award. Where's we have a sound drop that we typically use here.
He have a very big testicles. He have a very big testicles.
We don't need to do that again.
He plays it twice.
Well, the auto configuration is that it loops, right? Which is a weird thing.
No, we're talking about really big testicles today, guys. Twice the size.
So is this something we're doing, or do we just it's a foregone conclusion that this is Locatelli followed by McKennie?
Yeah. Without a doubt.
No objection.
Yeah, they were the only two who merited, right?
All right. Let's take a brief look ahead. I mean, we're closing in on nearly a 2-hour discussion, and thank you for those again who joined on, who have stayed with us on YouTube for this duration. It's been a more enjoyable conversation than I thought it would be. It's been a pleasure talking with Zach, Jack, Frederic, and of course all of you joining. And for those of you who are listening later, and if you've made it an hour 45 minutes in, thank you. Let's move. So we've got Galatasaray coming up in just 2 days, the away trip to Istanbul, and then we have to return and face a critical match against Como, and then of course we have Roma and the return home leg for the Champions League. So very, very critical 4 matches ahead of us. I'll give it to anybody who wants to jump in. How do you think what happened this weekend impacts what we see on the pitch on Tuesday? And it's the early game, right? This will be the first match of the knockout round played.
I've been juggling with this, and usually I'm pretty confident when I sort of play out a game in my mind of how things might shake out. As anyone who follows us on Beppe Show, I am destroying you guys in our match predictions. But after what happened yesterday, I really struggled with it, because there's usually a letdown after a big game. But when you got hard done by, the question is the letdown harder, or is the team going to eliminate any letdown with how angry they are? And I side with the latter than the former. I think this team is going to come out aggressively and angry and wanting to show the world what they're really made out of. And so I had originally picked for this away game going on relatively short rest to a hostile environment, a 2-2 draw, because I thought we were going to come out and play well, but against their attack, which is quite good, I thought we were going to bleed goals. I think we're going to see a more committed Juventus, and I think my original prediction might very well be wrong, and that we come out with a win because of how angry and driven we are.
It'll be nice to see Kenan back in Turkey and see what that does to his performance.
I don't think he cares that much, to be honest. I think for Kenan, the Champions League is the bigger objective, and you know,
the stage,
having that stage to show what he can do. But I have to agree with Zach. I think we'll come out all guns blazing. I don't think this team is as fragile mentally as it was 4 or 5 months ago. I think they've grown a lot. They're aware of their shortcomings, but they're very aware of They're positive. They're pros, and I think they also know that the Galatasaray defense is a shaky one.
Yeah.
So if we can, stick it to them attackingly and keep pressure on them, they're bound to make mistakes. The only thing I fear a bit is we don't have that much weight in midfield. I'd like to see Thuram in midfield, which won't happen probably. Which for me, and those types of games, those gritty, dirty, hard-fought games, is a bit of a loss. Um, but we'll see what he can do because Moretti to me was very disappointing once again yesterday.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if he believes in Cope anymore in that midfield position, which leaves us at a bit of a pickle in terms of who to put next to Locatelli for that part. So I'm pretty sure he'll try to do a Spalletti thing and maybe do something we didn't expect. But that's going to be the deal breaker for me, the strength and the physical body in midfield.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add, I don't want to reiterate too much of what was already said. Yes, I do think we're going to come out hot. I'll be looking for three things, I think, over the next week. Number one, Fred touched on it. How are we going to set up in the midfield? I do think we need Thuram, even though we're not going to see him. I think he'll be missed. Number two, I'm worried about the matchup of Osimhen and Bremer. Bremer pre-ACL had a hard time with him when he was at Napoli. So I'm a little concerned about that matchup in the back. I want to see how he handles him. I want to see if Spalletti does anything with Kelly's movement to try to cancel out Osimhen's movements in the channel and pushing into the box. And then for me, it's easier to come out in this game hot and try to score and early and take control of the game. But Saturday or Sunday of next weekend to me is equally as important. How we come out in Serie A after what we just saw 24 hours ago, playing a huge game against the team that's right on our tail in the standings. I'd love to start a game off against them the way they started off against us, however many months back. I think it was in October, scoring in the first 3 or 4 minutes of the game. That's what I think we need to see. So those are three things that just come to mind right away over the next week that I'll probably be focusing on.
The fourth, Jack, I think that was awesome. I think the fourth thing I would add to that is I'd like to see David show up. He had a nice period there, starting with that Sassuolo match and going a number of matches with certain number of goals and assists, and he had some confidence back. But he's been invisible the last couple games, and now I know he was. When you go down a man, the forward's ability to have an impact on a game is limited, but he's still, despite us playing quite well in that first half, he did not have, he had a bit part role in what we were doing. And I think if we're going to be in the best position to secure positive results over these next 4 games, he's going to have to contribute.
I like him better with Yildiz, McKennie, and Miretti on the field than I do when he has Chico or Zhigurova or Opendo with him.
Well, because Moretti in that advanced position plays closer to him and he can play off of it. I was going to make a joke to what Kevin said that if David doesn't whiff that cross from McKennie, freezing the defense, Cambiasso probably doesn't score that goal.
Yeah.
So, that
was his contribution. Okay.
7D chest from David there. I'm going to freeze the defense with a dummy shot so that Cambiasso can step in front of Luis Enrique. And, go ahead, Frederic.
Can we also take into account that it was Openda's best performance yesterday?
It's an interesting take.
It's certainly one of the takes that ever existed. Defend yourself.
I mean,
I think it was
I was very impressed with was that when he went back and had that defensive run and earned the foul. Who was he up against? Was that Thuram or
no DiMarco? I think.
Was it DiMarco? Okay,
I don't
couldn't remember, but right after coming on, he ran like 50 meters to track back and positioned himself well to get the foul. But I don't remember a whole lot else other than
but this is like the beginning of a player finding himself or trying to redeem himself. And I just like the fact that he tried that yesterday, even though he was getting garbage minutes as well. But you could see some sort of a spark. And maybe I'm clutching on the straws here, but from what I could tell, this was somebody who tried his best and is not at the top of his shape yet. Doesn't know where he fits in exactly in the squad. But I thought he was, at least his work rate and his ethic were very, very, very agreeable and very nice to see after everything we saw of Openda.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't even rule out that he gets more minutes against
Well,
Galatasaray.
so let me
to be
modify
honest.
my point then. Like, we just need production from our strikers. But
Yeah.
between
Yeah,
David
yeah,
and
yeah,
Openda,
yeah,
we
yeah,
need contribution for them
Yeah.
and not to be passengers on the pitch.
Because days where David is a really good passer but contributes nothing to goals and assists, right? We all know that there's been a lot of those days. He's doing the bare minimum at most. You know, Openda working really hard yesterday is the bare minimum to me. You know, I mean, you expect him to be disruptive in the press game. Like, that's why he's there, to run around and be a gnat, just annoying the crap out of people to help kill time and to pressure balls. Like, so that I don't want to say he was bad when I say he was one of the performances that ever existed. It's more so that I think I expected as much from him, you know, any player coming in that moment to do that at minimum. Real quick note on the Como game, because I know we're kind of at the end of the program, but I think one thing that needs to be said is that uncharacteristically, Como has a midweek game. So they actually are going to get 1 day less of rest than we will, because they play Milan midweek, and that's a game.
The rescheduled game from the Olympic opening ceremony. I forgot that game was this week. Okay.
So they have 1 fewer day of rest, and that's not a game that they can take lightly, because they just lost against Fiorentina, going into a run of really tough games for themselves. And they need, kind of like us with the Napoli game after the bad game that preceded it, they need to pick up points again. And so they're going to put all their effort into that basket. And so we'll be getting a team that is, again, 1 day fewer.
That's a really good point.
And there is some unrest in the Como dressing room as well, from what I've heard. There's some.
Well, Fabregas was airing dirty laundry in
he's
in his presser after the match too, which I think shows a little bit of arrogance and lack of professionalism on his part.
There's a bit of bickering as well, and I think Spalletti is just the perfect man to take advantage of those things, given all of his experience and having had explosive dressing rooms before. I think he'll know how to, get something across from that situation.
If I'm a Serie A manager, like the 2 managers I wouldn't want to go against from a mind games perspective, who are currently in the league, is Allegri, who goes against it Wednesday, because Allegri always has the media just wrapped around his finger, and Spalletti, because Spalletti has been a genius at some of like the David controversies and all this stuff, has been absolutely spot on with how he has handled the media. Fabregas is not going to win any points in media games with these 2.
Definitely not. Yeah.
And I just got a text message that Spalletti tomorrow or the day after will buy a house in Turin. I'm not sure if it's for him personally. I'd hope so, because it's in the nicer part of Turin. But maybe that's already something, a bit of a prediction, as in, his extension. I don't know, but if you're going to buy a villa in the center of Turin or just outside of the center of Turin.
Well, if he's buying a villa, it's across the river.
Yeah, it's not in the center, but in the nice part where all the other players live. I think.
Over
can't remember the name.
It's the I'm forgetting it now too.
It's that whole estate thing where they have like these Tuscan style villas as well and things like that. So
no, I think that's a good sign. And if
shout out Ozymandias in the chat real quick, because I was right on board with that. I'd go to Turin to help him move in.
Free of charge.
We need some hands moving some furniture or setting some stuff up. Well,
I'll carry the trophies if he doesn't mind.
oh my goodness. Well, gentlemen, some collection of the four of us, I imagine, will be doing the post game after Galatasaray. So I definitely look forward to that. I think that probably takes us to the end of what was a very engaging, challenging, but also enjoyable conversation despite the subject material. Pleasure as always to speak with the three of you, and for everybody who joined us on YouTube. Again, I know we've thanked you many times, but that's just how important it is to us. If you're here and you haven't subscribed to the channel or liked this episode, please do. It doesn't take you very long, and it means so much to us. And if you're listening in audio format or watching the video afterwards, thanks for reaching this far, 2 hours in. And I think we'll leave it there. Huge sequence of games ahead of us, and we will be there for you, win, lose, or draw. Fino alla fine. Forza Juventus.
Parte Del Piero, rete Del Piero.
Con i contadini per